Quickly before you go live, let me just close.
It's live. It's gone live now, and it goes to YouTube, FaceTime, LinkedIn, everywhere. And I
Okay,
guarantee by the time I post it, it's gonna go everywhere.
okay.
Yeah, people actually listen to this, and my family listens to it. And you're gonna get a. If I put it on LinkedIn, you'll probably get 200 views afterwards.
Very
I don't
good.
know why. So everybody, this is Fran Lewis, and this is MJ Network, MJ in memory of my sister on Restream. This is brand new. I'm getting used to it, and my cobb is here, and the novel is right there. Keep it next to me. You will know me by my deeds. People have said that before. So we're going to talk about. I love this guy, Billy Tarwater, and I love Cynthia. And he's behind the scenes until his anonymous incident threatens to destroy everything he and his wife hold dear. But I'm not going to give away anything. So, what's a brief summary, and why did you focus on real murders? Because that's hard to do sometimes.
It is hard to do. So, which would you like for me to address first? Sort of the story of You Will Know Me by My Deeds, or why I focused on murders? Because there is a backstory to the
Uh huh.
reason the reason I write about crime. So we can talk about either. It's really up to you which you would prefer to talk about first.
The real murders.
Okay.
This the real murders really interested me, and what got me was that how you listed the names of everyone that was killed. I cried at the end of each paragraph.
Well, I tell you, it's powerful,
Yeah.
and very very touching. So yeah, so this is a sequel to my prior book, The Devil You Knew, which prominently featured several characters, including Billy Tarwater and his wife Cynthia. Um, and so several things were sort of left dangling at the end of The Devil You Knew, which was by design. And I pick up the story in You Will Know Me by
Uh,
My Deeds. And the bottom line is, and You Will Know Me by My Deeds, somebody is out to get Billy and Cynthia. Mainly, at first, we learn that somebody's out to get Cynthia, but then they're not really sure that whether they might actually not be out to get Billy as well. They don't know whether it's because of what happened in The Devil You Knew
uh,
or whether it might be related to the Atlanta child murders. So, for those of you who do not know, the Atlanta child murders were
hmm
basically a series of kidnappings and murders of young black children that occurred between 1979 and 1981. Over 20 black children went missing and were found dead. So Billy is a newspaper man. We learned that in The Devil You Knew, but he's still a newspaper man working for the local newspaper, and he is assigned to cover these murders. But he discovers a backstory, which, by the way, is based on fact.
mm,
Billy is a fictional character, but there is a backstory that there may be a nefarious group, a family that's part of a nefarious group that may be committing all or part of these murders. And so Billy is digging a lot on the side. He has been ordered by his editor not to go there, if you will, but he is
hmm
doing a lot of digging on the side. And so whoever is out to get them, it may be related to that. They just don't know at this point. The reason I focused on the Atlanta child murders, I remember them well. I remember the impact that those murders had, well, not only on the city and on a lot of the families, but also the general public, especially the black community in Atlanta, but also the impact and the sensationalism of the story extended pretty much worldwide at the time. I included the story of stories or the details of virtually every child's murder in this book. At first, I did not set out to do that, but I have a wonderful group of fellow writers who read everything that I write. It's basically a critique group, and they felt that I should include all of the children. I wanted to tell their story. I didn't want to leave any stone unturned, if you will. And even though it's tough to read, as is any crime detail. I really wanted to include all the children in this book, which I ended up doing.
Well, that's why it made it real.
Yeah.
It's not like, I've read too many books, you know that, too many. And a lot of people just write, well, this is what happened, but you're not telling me who it happened to. So it brings it home, makes it more powerful because you included the names of every child so that we
Hmm.
understand the heartache that every family went through. And working with African American kids in my school, they did talk about it. So I had the kind of classes that were bright enough to understand, so they understood the meaning of all of what was happening, and it broke everybody's heart.
Hmm.
So now we meet in chapter one. This was really sad. Cynthia, and she realizes that she's being followed, and I
Yes.
like her character. I
You
like
do or you
Billy.
do not?
I like her. She's interesting.
Okay.
There are times when she could, get kind of. But I love him, and well, when they read the ending, they're gonna cry.
Yeah. Cynthia. So I love Cynthia. I love all my characters, but
Yeah, I like the bad ones too.
yeah, I love, well, you know what? Even the bad characters in a book, if the book is well written, even the bad characters, they still are humans. They still are people. They still have personalities. And one of the things I endeavor to do is I really endeavor to better understand the personalities and the motivations of even the bad characters because they're people, just like the good. Um, for those readers who have read The Devil You Knew,
Yeah.
which begins with Cynthia when she's an adolescent, they will have learned that Cynthia is a little saucy, a little spicy, a little flirty. She's a complex young woman now, and was a complex adolescent girl in the first book, and that's one of the things I love about her. But anyway, yes, in chapter one, somebody is following her. It's a rainy evening. She has gone over to Billy's mother's to pick up their two children. She's on her way home, and she realizes that she sees two blurred headlights in the rearview mirror. That's the way the story begins, and she realizes that at some point, she realizes somebody is following her.
That's
And
sad.
so the first few chapters of the book really take us through all of that situation. The fact that somebody's following her and their efforts to try to figure out why somebody might be following
Yeah.
her. Again, is it somebody trying to finish the job that was not finished in The Devil You Knew? And I don't want to go into too much detail
No,
there,
don't tell them.
but is it that, or is it somehow related to the fact that Billy has been digging into this, backstory of the child murders? We just don't know at this point.
Anybody that hurts children deserves whatever they get.
Yeah,
That gets me. Yeah, it does. I mean, dealing I dealt with black children in my school, and any parent that abused a child, the kids told me, I took care of it. You know what the sad part was? I was right.
yeah,
That's the sad part. You can't let it go. You have to do something. So
yeah.
these questions we answered before. Who is Wayne Williams, and why was he arrested? And that's interesting.
Yeah, so this is a big part of the story, a big part of the book,
Yeah.
that parallel story, if you will, to the Billy and Cynthia story. Um, Wayne Williams. So this is let me just mention one thing, and that is a lot of what is in this book is factual. All the detail except a little bit with respect to liberties that I've taken with dialogue and things like that. The detail with respect to the individual children's murders is true. The detail with respect to Wayne Williams is true, and I'll get back to Wayne
Yeah.
Williams in just a minute. And a lot of the detail regarding the sort of the essentials of this family, this nefarious family that may have been behind some of the murders, that is also true. Wayne Williams is a young black man who is serving time in a prison in Georgia for killing two adults. He was a suspect in the child murders, um, but he was never tried or convicted for the
Yeah.
murder of one child. So once he was pegged as the potential or alleged murderer of these children, and he was tried for killing two black adults, and there was some circumstantial evidence that he might have been involved in killing some of the black children, but he was never tried. But once he was convicted of killing the two adults, he was pretty much deemed guilty in the court of public opinion and by the authorities for killing all the black children, and he's serving time in prison. I am convinced, based on extensive research that I've done
Hmm.
and that others have done, that Wayne Williams is not guilty of having killed all of the black
Yeah.
children, maybe some of them, but not all of them. And that's a big part of the story of the book.
That's the sad part. But you know, a lot of times on the news, they get one person and they just don't go any further. And they
Yes.
don't I know when they investigate. I've interviewed quite a few law enforcement. I asked them that question straight out. And I've
Yeah.
interviewed people in the FBI too. I get brave a lot. And
Yeah.
I said, they just pick a victim and that's it. Even now, if you're looking at the news. Well, I
Yeah.
don't look at the news because I don't want to deal with what's going on in the news.
I understand.
Yeah, so we
I do
have
understand.
what Cynthia went through. I won't say why. In my own mind, I understand. So she gets haunted by memories, and what happened to her could happen to anybody.
Yes.
It's hard to forget.
Yes. What happened to her could happen to anybody. Um, and that's a big part. Again, for those who have read The Devil You Knew, that's a big part of The Devil You Knew is what
Yes.
she went through. And frankly, without going into a lot of detail, when you go through what Cynthia went through
Yeah.
in The Devil You Knew, not only is there sort of proximate, if you will, physical and emotional trauma, but there is lasting trauma that exists often for the rest of a victim's life, really. And so Cynthia is still. So what happened to her happened back in 1963 in The Devil You
Yeah.
Knew, and still now in 1981, 1982, she's still feeling the trauma from it.
Now we have three questions in one. I'm getting good at this. So we have Gary, who I love, and Billy, and we meet Finnegan. So how and why does he connect with Gary, and how do the three work together? I
How
like
to how to
Gary.
how to
Gary's a good guy.
Gary and Billy and Finnegan.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gary is a police detective. He's actually a larceny detective.
Yeah.
He and Billy go back way back to their childhood. I mean, they played army together with a couple of their other friends when they were kids. That was part of The Devil You Knew. And so Gary always wanted to be a policeman. His father was a police detective. And so Gary joins the police and he sort of rises through the ranks and he's a detective now. And when Billy realizes that somebody's following Cynthia, he reaches out to Gary because he wants Gary to help him try to figure out what's going on. So they reconnect after not seeing each other for quite a while. And they don't skip a beat. I mean, it's like when you're, you may have experienced this before. I certainly have. If you have a really good friend, you can go years without seeing that friend, but then when you connect with them again, it's almost like, I mean, you don't skip a beat. It's almost like you saw them yesterday. And that's that kind of friendship's really important, and that's the kind of friendship that Billy and Gary have. So Finnegan is actually based on a true person,
Ooh.
but I have fictionalized him, and a lot of the stuff he goes through in the book is fictionalized, but there is an essence of truth to what Finnegan experiences. So Finnegan is an informer basically, and he has embedded himself in with this nefarious family that I will say now because it becomes pretty obvious quickly, and I actually talk about it a little bit in the preface to the book. He embeds himself in with this KKK family, who have a stated mission that is revealed to him, since he's an informer, a stated mission of killing one black child a month to foment race riots in Atlanta. Again, this is all based on investigative work that was actually done and
Mm.
reported in the news. The allegations were, and these are allegations, that when the authorities got wind through this informer that this KKK family had a stated mission of killing black children, they were scared to death that if word got out
That's
that
sad.
they were behind all or some of these killings of these black children, that there would be race riots in the city. Again, that's a part of the story. Now, the factual part is that these are allegations that were based upon investigative work that was done by a couple of investigative journalists. That's truth. I have fictionalized it, and they still are to this day allegations. So I want to be careful that I don't falsely accuse anybody of anything. But I did. But then anyway, that's Finnegan. So Gary learns about Finnegan,
Mm.
and one day he calls up Billy at the newspaper office, and Billy answers, and he says, "We're not having this conversation." And Billy says, "What are you talking about? We're not having this conversation." And he tells him a little bit, and then they meet, and Billy learns about this family and about Finnegan, and then Billy ends up meeting with Finnegan, and then from there on, Billy, as a journalist, is involved in this sort of side hustle, if you will, trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. And even though his newspaper editor has told him not to pursue it. So anyway, that's sort of how Finnegan, Gary, and Billy come together.
Well, all I know is that Billy reminds me of me because if I want to know something, I'm not going to stop till I get the answer. My,
Yep,
my 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 father used to say that to me. Don't count on anybody else to help you. Find out yourself.
yep,
And you know, sometimes you stick your foot in your mouth, but who cares? Because if you really want to fix something, you gotta. Yeah, that's exactly the
yeah.
point.
But it
So
may be
what?
because
Yeah,
Billy's doing that
yeah,
that somebody's out to get him, or maybe
yeah.
him through Cynthia. We just don't know at this point.
So what is GBI? And then there's more black children that are killed. Did somebody really has a hate for these poor kids? Were
Yeah.
they any particular type? Did they run away? Were they discipline problems, or they just were normal teenagers? Because if you listen to the news today, they're not much different. As a matter of fact,
Well,
today they're much worse.
it's a little hard to say. First of all, GBI is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, so it's the
Yeah.
state equivalent to the FBI. And so the GBI was investigating these child murders, and the FBI was brought in to investigate the child murders. So this was a joint effort among the Atlanta Police Department, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI. Okay, so you ask about the kids.
Yeah.
So It's a mix. I mean, some of the kids were, doing some questionable things.
Yeah, they do.
They do, and that's sort of understandable. Some of the kids were not, but some of the kids, I believe, based on the research I've done, were perhaps falsely accused
Uh-huh.
by the police of being involved with drugs and things like that when the police actually had no proof of that. This actually comes out a little bit in the book as well. So when you try to parse or assess whether these kids were good kids or bad kids, I know that's sort of binary, but when you try to parse that, you have to take into consideration that some of the things that were said about them by the police and in the press may or may not have been true.
Well, sometimes they accuse them because of the color of their skin. And
Yes.
yeah, I know that. I
Yeah.
know that. And I know that even in my school, I refused. All the children were pretty much black Americans, except the first 2 years I was teaching, it was mixed. And I would not let anybody say anything about anything. But the funny part was, this is true, they didn't know what I was.
Oh, okay.
They couldn't figure out what I was because I came back from Puerto Rico and my skin was very dark. My father was dark.
Oh, okay.
And one kid looked at me, he said, "It's about time your black came out."
Oh, that's funny.
And I looked at him and I go, "You finally found out the truth." It was hilarious, but I thought that was a compliment from
Right.
the kid. And
Yeah,
he
that's
meant it
good.
as that. He said, "Now you're one of us." I said, "Sorry." It stuck with me. So who was Rufus? And I know chapter 9 includes all the names. Who is Rufus? And I felt so bad with Rulubi. I cried for him. That was sad.
Yeah. So before I tell you about Rufus, let me just talk about Sam Jefferson for a minute. So
Yeah,
Sam Jefferson was a black man
he
who
was
shined
arrested.
shoes. Yes, who shined shoes at a barber shop in Atlanta where Billy and Cynthia grew up in the neighborhood they grew up in. Sam basically was arrested for what happened to the
Yeah.
girls in The Devil You Knew and sent to prison. Rufus is his son. Rufus is the same age as Billy. When Rufus and Billy were both 11 years old back in the Devil You Knew, um, Billy's mother's maid, a wonderful, wonderful woman named Dovey May, actually introduced Billy and Rufus, and they sort of hit it off when they were kids. But Rufus has had a hard life because he grew up in the projects. He saw his father go off to prison. His mother later on was actually injured on a food processing line at the food processing plant where she was working. So she's partially disabled. So Rufus has had a really really hard time of it, and yeah, so he plays sort of a side role in the book. I wouldn't say that it's a major role, but it's an important role, and I'll just leave it at that. I love Rufus so much, and there is a possibility if there ends up being a sequel to You Will Know Me by My Deeds.
Ah, good.
There are a couple of people who may end up playing important roles in that book. One of them being Rufus, and one of them being a little boy who I really don't want to go into much because he's so important to the book. A little boy named Brody. So yeah,
Yup, I loved him.
I love Brody.
I not only
Yeah.
did I love Brody, but I love the fact that he had instinct
Yes.
to understand who to trust and who not to trust.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what got me. I said, this is not a nasty, horrible kid. This is a
No.
child that appreciated everything. And
Yes, but he was.
how many kids like him would even think to fit in anywhere?
Yeah, but he was a kid who was born into a terrible, terrible family.
Yeah, I know. And he was blessed in the sense just by accident, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So who is Vanderman? And then I know Sam was arrested, and I felt like, I knew right away he was wrongly accused.
Yeah. So it's actually Vardaman. Actually, it's a Vardaman family. So the ringleader after their father died is a guy named Graydon Vardaman, and he is the ringleader of this KKK family. The Vardamans,
Yeah.
Graydon and his two brothers, and one of their wives, Sonia, they are all based on true people.
Well,
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, there are a lot of people listening. I just got emails on my phone for people that are listening.
Well, very good.
Yeah, that's
I hope
rare. Yeah. Well,
I hope everybody will read the book
I
because
never post anything on Facebook ever.
yeah,
But I said, you know what? They all do, so I should too. And my
that's good.
students are blogging your show
Very
because,
good.
yeah, they love me. They think I'm a genius. So that makes it even better. I said, what's worse is they have to see my face. That's even worse too.
Well, since you have so many people, and I will just do this quickly. I will share with you the first book. So this is The Devil You Knew. If anybody is
They
interested in
should read
reading
that.
it first, The Devil You Knew, and then as Fran mentioned, here, this is the second book. You Will Know Me by My Deeds.
They should definitely read it because you're going to learn a lot about the Atlanta murders too. And
Yes.
that the ending, like, huh? So why does they got sideswiped on this one? Why does Billy think that Cynthia's safe from the stalker? And what's this in symbol of 1971 Impala Forger? What happened?
Yeah. So there's this Impala that's actually following her. You know, a couple of times, and she's really concerned, but then several days go by and it's not following her anymore and nothing is happening. And so Billy's thinking, well, maybe there was nothing to it. Maybe it
Mm,
was just a fluke.
mm.
Maybe this car really wasn't following her. Maybe it was just purely coincidental. But she doesn't think that. I mean, Cynthia is convinced, no, there's something to this. And she's a little frustrated because Billy's sort of not poo-pooing it, but is not convinced that there's something to it. And then all of a sudden, it happens again.
So
And that's,
now we have
yeah.
Leonard Seymour. I'm not crazy about him. Why did Billy? Yeah, why? I didn't trust him at all. Why did Billy need to talk to him? But people don't mess with Billy. Bad
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. So Leonard Seymour played a very important role in The Devil You Knew, as you know, Fran.
Hmm.
And for those who have read it, they will know that Leonard Seymour was a one of the most important characters in that book. And here he raises his ugly head yet again in You Will Know Me by My Deeds. And a lot of it has to do with that 71 Impala. And when Gary starts running um, checks through his police contacts on 71 Impalas in Atlanta, a discovery is made that there might be a
Mm.
connection
Mm.
between Leonard Seymour and this car. I won't go into great detail, but that's
No.
sort of how Leonard Seymour actually is is involved with sings in the choir actually at the Baptist church that Billy went to, that plays an important role in The Devil You Knew. And Billy goes there looking for Leonard because he wants to talk to Leonard about this, and Leonard isn't there. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But Leonard ends up playing a seminal role in this book as well.
He's amazing. if more reporters were like him, maybe the truth would come out.
Well, I will tell you just
Yeah,
as a little bit of an aside, people have asked me
yeah,
about this a lot. If indeed Wayne Williams is not guilty
yeah, I know.
of committing all of these murders, and the prior, this is actually comes out in the epilogue
Yeah,
to the book. The prior mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, actually reopened the case because she wanted to get to the bottom of it, and they were supposedly doing DNA analysis. Nothing has become of that. I would like nothing more. Will this happen? I don't know, but I would like nothing more than for this book to maybe play a little bit of a role in
mm,
reinvigorating, resurrecting, whatever you want to call it, the questions surrounding these child murders and the questions that linger today as to whether Wayne Williams committed all the murders.
but it wouldn't matter anyway. He'd still be in jail, right?
He would still be in jail for killing the two adults.
Yeah, but if you know something, sometimes you protest too much, but maybe they really need to find out because
Yeah.
maybe there's somebody out there that's still doing this.
Yeah, and the truth is the
And that's
truth.
what bothers me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we have Finnegan. That was another tissue, by the way. And he helps him. Why? And why is Sam in danger? I was getting like, you can't be safe in this book, no matter who you are.
So the reason Finnegan, the motivation that Finnegan has for wanting to get to work with Billy is because Finnegan is frustrated that he's uncovered all this information about this clan family. And the Atlanta police and the GBI aren't doing anything with it.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating Finnegan. And when he first brings Billy into his confidence zone, if you will, he has Billy promise. He says, look, if I'm going to share all this with you, you got to promise that you're going to do something with it.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to pursue it. You got to promise me that you'll do that. But keep me out of it if you can. But I'm going to share with you everything I know from this work I've been doing as an informer. But try to keep me out of it. But get to the bottom of it. Billy's problem is he's determined to get to the bottom of it. But his newspaper editor is saying, no, don't go there. Don't pursue this.
Mm.
And one of the reasons, and again, this is fiction, but one of the reasons his newspaper editor is saying, don't pursue this, is because the powers, the higher ups, if you will,
Mm.
in the city, don't want to pursue it, again, because they're scared that if word got out that this Klan family is killing black children, there would be race riots in Atlanta. And
Now
there
we
probably would have
have,
been. There probably would have
yeah.
been, actually.
Now we have Belinda. I don't like her. And she got Cynthia very nervous. And why were they spying on Vanderman?
On Vardaman, um, yeah, I don't know how much I want to go into about that, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
No, we'll go
Yeah,
into how did you create? These were interesting because I couldn't, when there's a court scene and it's described the right way, I read it. When it's a court scene again, oh my God, why me? I mean, I just read a New York Times book. I won't say which one. I skipped through the sword scene because I really wanted to know the ending because I was so bored. I could
uh-huh.
have told you how to write it. So, how did you create the court scenes?
A lot of my creation of the court scene was based on research that I did, reading descriptions from reporters that were, that were included in newspaper articles at the time. Um, I also one of the things that I one of the things I really like to do when I'm writing historical fiction And all of my books so far are based on true crimes that have occurred. In many cases, and in all cases, cold cases, except my fourth book, which has not come out yet. But one of the things I like to do is I like to immerse myself in the true settings, if you will, for the
Mhm.
book. So I spent a lot of time downtown. I live in Midtown Atlanta. I spent a lot of time downtown at the state capitol. I
Mm.
also spent time at the courthouse. I also was able to actually get my way into one of the courtrooms at that same courthouse
Mm.
where Wayne Williams was tried. There was not a trial going on at the time. Although a lot of these trials, they're open. These procedures are open to the public. But I spent time down there because I just wanted to immerse myself in that courtroom. Because by immersing myself in that courtroom,
Mhm.
and then also reading the extemporaneous newspaper accounts of the trial, it really helped me write those courtroom scenes. Um, I also there's a part in the book that deals with when Cynthia takes the kids to a concert in the rotunda of the state capitol. I actually went down there and spent time in that rotunda, just sitting there, or standing in the rotunda, just getting a feel for what it would have been like when Cynthia was sitting there with the kids listening to this concert. I think and there's also a big part of the book that takes place in a sort of a rundown area around the viaducts of Atlanta. It's a very ominous, eerie part of the book, almost spine tingling part of the book. I went down there and I spent time in that very spot, in that, it's called the Gulch now. Spent time in that very spot where Cynthia and the kids were one fateful evening when something really bad happens. I love immersing myself in the moment and in the setting.
Yeah, but you're lucky because I write horror, real horror. I make it up. And I wanted the help of the fire department up here to explain to me what happens when there's arson and how do you figure it out. You know what they told me to do? They said, look it up on the internet. I was fuming. I said, you're right there. You're the fire chief. Why can't you tell me? And I was very hurt and disappointed. I said, you're not going to help a local author? I said, I'll even plug your fire department. I'll even give you an hour. Well, it used to be on Blog Talk. This is better. I said, and they wouldn't help me. So you have to be lucky.
Well, I will tell you, Fran, and we can talk about this later. I have a friend who is a fellow writer who is a New York fireman.
Yeah.
He's just written a book
Oh,
that
nice.
it is a mystery, but it's sort of centers on the New York Fire Department. Um, I would love to connect you to. I mean, we can talk about this
Not a
offline, but
problem.
I would
Not
love
a
to connect you
problem.
to. Yeah.
He could send it to me in print, and I'm right there to read it. You know, I
Okay.
had the weirdest email yesterday. It was like, I don't know how people find me. It's frightening. And the post office is not delivering as much. But this guy that emailed me yesterday is from India.
Huh.
And I said, how did you find me? I didn't realize I was on the yellow pages of book reviewers anymore. And he asked if I would review his book. I said, fine. Now, I don't know if he was truthful or whatever. He said, in order to send me the book from Amazon in India, it would cost him 1,627 INRs, which is about $20, something like that, in American. I
Huh.
said, so whatever, plus the book. So I said, you know what? I'll buy it for 10, and I don't have to do that. He offered to pay me back on it. And I said, no, you know what? I'm just helping a fellow author. Because the book is about the war criminals, Nazi, Eva Braun and Hitler.
Oh,
And then,
interesting.
yeah, well, don't ask how many things I read. I go crazy. But yeah, if he sends me the book in print, I'll put it at the top of my list. And if he wants to do an hour, I could do this whenever I want.
Sure.
That's the cool part. So, what's next for Billy? What's next for you? And where can everybody learn more about everything?
So, what's next for Billy?
And
I'm
there's
not
one
sure.
person I didn't mention,
Who is that?
the person that you needed the permission for Brody.
The person that I needed.
That's the person that Billy needed permission for Brody.
Oh, yes. Um,
I thought that was
yeah,
powerful. That was
yes.
another
Uh,
tissue, by the way.
yeah, another tissue. Yeah, that occurs sort of late in the book. So
Yeah. I
read
hope
the
that's
book.
going to be in the next one.
Yeah. So where does Billy go from here? Where does Cynthia
Yeah.
go from here? I don't know. I mean, look, they have become important parts of my life. My characters live in my head, or I live in their heads, or whatever. And yeah, so they're not going away. And this kid Brody, who, if you read the book, you'll learn about him. He's not going away. So I'm not exactly sure yet. I've wrapped up my fourth book, which is coming out between April. Nominally, the pub date's April 15th.
Oh, good.
I think we're going to make that date. It's called Muzzle the Black Dog. It's a novella.
Oh,
It's
nice.
it's also based on a true crime. Um, I may, after that, work on a sequel to You Will Know Me by My Deeds, because I do want to do something with Billy and Cynthia and Brody. I'm just
Uh-huh.
not sure. I'm not sure yet. In terms of where people can learn more about me and find my books, so my website is Mike Cobb Writer, all one character string, MikeCobbWriter.com. There are actually links on my website to buy my book from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, um, bookshop.org. So you can actually buy the book through my website or directly from Amazon or Barnes and Noble or bookshop.org. Um,
You'd
yeah,
be surprised how many more places it's on. I found out when I blogged myself, Scribner, Kobo, everywhere. Everywhere. England, Japan,
yeah.
China, everywhere. So if you
Well,
want
you
to
can
buy,
probably buy your books. I know you can buy my books, I think, on Walmart.com.
yeah, you can. Walmart,
So
Walgreens, they all have them.
yeah, yeah.
I have no idea why, but they do. But my this last book is not on Barnes and Noble because my publisher messed up,
Uh-oh.
and she didn't. I don't care. You know what? I made a mistake. I used the wrong person, and because I think it's good, I don't have any. I have one review. She did it. So what's the point? But anyway, when am I getting the next one? The novella.
The novella. So the novella is scheduled to be published April 15th.
Okay.
It is, without going into great detail,
Uh,
it is about a man who lives in a cabin in the woods outside of
oh,
Marble,
nice.
North Carolina. And around midnight one night, he gets a knock on the door, and there's a stranger at the door who claims to know him, who claims to know my main character. And just take it from there. It is loosely based in part, on the Olympic Park bombing and Eric Rudolph, if you remember that story from
Yep.
Atlanta. And this guy who knocks on his door looks a lot like Eric Rudolph. And Eric Rudolph was found, by the way, dumpster diving behind a Save-A-Lot in or near Marble, North Carolina.
Oh,
So
that's
there's
better.
some parallels there. So it is a sort of a psychological thriller. It's one of these books where at times you really don't know whether what you're reading is actually happening or might be in this character's imagination. the main character's imagination. Um, I'm actually working on the screenplay for that book right now as well, which is I'm in the early stages of that.
This is better.
Um, and I will mention one other thing that I'm working on if you have a minute. Um, People have asked me why I write about crime.
It's interesting though.
It is interesting. So I write about crime in large part, and especially unsolved murders, because when I was 17, and I was trying to find myself, as a lot of 17-year-old kids are, and I was really trying to figure out a lot of stuff. And this young woman who was introduced to me by a family member, who was 23 to my 17, took me under her wing at a time when it really meant a lot to me. And I wake up one morning, I pick up the paper and read on the front page that she has been murdered,
Mm.
execution style. And I have been for many years, I was working, I was trying to raise a family, but this always in the back of my mind just bothered me because it's still to this day a cold case. And I knew at some point I was going to have to do something with that. And now that I'm retired, I have plenty of time on my hands, and I have been working since 2019 with a private investigator. We have been working with the Atlanta Police, with the GBI, with the State Crime Lab, with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. There's a lot of nefarious stuff related to her death. One of the top homicide detectives in the department was a close family member to one of the suspects. Soon after her death, every bit of evidence except the bullets went missing. There was plenty of DNA in that evidence box. We know what was in the evidence box. Um, the people at the State Crime Lab and the GBI basically have said this just doesn't happen. It's so unusual for all the evidence to go missing in
Yeah, I
an
know.
execution murder cold case. Um, so I'm in the process of writing that story, but it's going to take a long time. It may take me a year to write it.
I know what you're
Um,
saying. My sister had a major heart attack on June 26, 2010. And I know what caused it. And I know why she's gone. And I know who didn't call 911 for an hour and a half.
well,
And I know I called the police and they did nothing about it
yeah.
because the person was able to cover it up. So I wrote her story, but I couldn't write her words, which is sad.
Hmm.
She called me at 7 o'clock that morning to tell me she was going to exercise class. But she said,
Yeah.
I said, Marcia Joy, that's what my network is named after her, Network. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. This has been so interesting. And when your son wants to send me the book, just send it. And if he wants to do an hour on Restream, let me tell me, because basically it's my network and I could do it whenever it's convenient. I usually don't do them in the afternoon, but if it's his work schedule, that's different.
Sure. All right.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. It's
Thank
freezing
you.
outside. It's 12 degrees outside. Have a
Oh
great
my.
day.